Yo, what's going on guys? Arekkz here, welcome back to another Division video. It is that time of the week again where the vendors have reset, so I'm here to tell you guys what is for sale, and of those items, whether or not any of those are worth purchasing. So if you guys do enjoy this, then a like would be super appreciated. Comment down below if you have any questions. Also, as a quick reminder, now we've started seeing some stuff from Last Stand and patch 1.6. One of the most important things to remember is that the gear score is not going to increase, so you don't have to worry about the usual kind of pre-patch preparation where you kind of stop buying things and start stocking up, because everything you have right now is still going to be of use in 1.6. There will of course be some balancing, some changes, some alterations to major and minor attributes, things like that, but fundamentally if you see something you like, you don't have to worry about kind of not buying it in fear of it becoming redundant. So with that being said, let's get started. First things first, I'm not going to speak about these ones individually, but Historian, Valkyria, Liberator, all of which are named high-end weapons. In 1.6, named high-end weapons are getting a massive pass. Finally, they are going to be getting a bespoke, unique talent that you can't get on any other weapon. They're also going to be transferred to exotic weapons, so they'll actually have a slightly different colour to them in that they won't be yellow high-ends, there'll be some other colour they decide to pick. So that does of course mean that the weapons that we have previously just been, discounting and saying they're useless, they could well be useful again. So while you don't necessarily need to buy them just yet, because it is entirely possible that once they've done the change, some of them still might be useless, if you do want to, say, be ready in preparation for the PTS to maybe try them out, or say have them when the actual retail version hits consoles or PC, then it might be worth just picking them up and putting them in your stash. But as mentioned, there's no urgency there. It's just if you have credits and they're spare, then know that as far as I'm aware, pretty much all high-ends are going to get a pass. For example, Valkyria is actually going to be changed into a new exotic weapon that's actually split into two. It'll be formed of a weapon called Air and Hilda, and it's basically part of a exotic weapon set where when you have both of them equipped, they synergize quite nicely. They activate a talent, and it's basically unique to that weapon. So I don't know whether if you own Valkyria, it'll automatically split into those two, or whether you'll still need to go and farm it, but either way, things to consider, so previously useless weapons may well have value. Anyway, Officers M9A1, Expert and Ferocious, Converted SMG9, Vicious, Capable and Determined, Tactical MK16, Fierce, Destructive and Sustained, couple of decent talents there but not one of the strongest archetypes, so Military M870, Dominant, Brutal and Trained, M700 Tactical, Fierce, Determined and Elevated, and a Military L86 LSW, Self-Preserved, Adept and Destructive. Nothing especially exciting there. Quickly jumping over the high-end ones. Of course, also another thing to bear in mind, that gear sets are going to get a pass, so Alpha Bridge is going to be nerfed in that it'll only transfer over the free talent as opposed to all three. You're also going to be getting changes to Reclaimer, so I'm kind of kicking myself that I've been dismantling those parts. So again, gear set pieces you might want to at least consider holding on to in preparation for the update, because when they do drop, you might want to start mixing things up. But anyway, usual gear pieces there, none of the typical sort of high-end ones like the kind of resourceful backpack or the kind of savage glove. So quick note on weapon mods, something else you might want to consider looking into, just sort of thinking about at this stage, and that is critical hit damage, because there's going to be a new gear set in 1.6 called Seeker, and it basically makes it so that you have 33% crit. It's a little bit more elegantly worded than that, in that it is every third body shot, but effectively that translates as 33% crit. So if you want to have a crit chance build, then if you were to run that set with some stuff that actually gives you crit damage, then you could actually do some pretty decent work. Obviously, haven't had a chance to test it myself yet, but in preparation for that, I might actually start keeping an eye out for some crit hit damage mods. After that, moving over to the advanced weaponry vendor, same thing goes for the named high-ends again. Consider picking these up if you don't have them. M1911, Expert and Swift, Black Market T821, Predatory, Swift and Talented, Military AK-47M with Prepared, Fierce and Accurate, Tactical SASG-12, Destructive, Vicious and Ferocious. Actually quite a nice set of talents on this one. That is something you might want to kind of consider grabbing if you haven't necessarily got it. The Tactical SASG is still one of the highest damage PvE shotguns, so if you guys do want to mix it up, if you do want to run a shotgun, then that is actually quite a nice thing to grab. SOCOM M1A, of course, Destructive, Fierce and Brutal. Again, not too bad talents on there. And Military M60E4, Accurate, Predatory and Dominant. Then jumping over to the Dark Zone gear vendor, only thing I want to talk about here is the prototype stamina mod. Now, again, they're making changes to the way that armor works in 1.6. Armor will go from being the kind of most important factor for your toughness to being the lesser factor, so it'll be a bigger focus on actually building your health. And that of course means that on gear that has a major armor role, that'll either be replaced with health or some sort of resist all attribute. I'm still waiting for the patch notes for the exact breakdown on how that works, but basically they want to put a bigger focus on health. So health and stamina will be a much greater weighting in toughness than armor. That should hopefully bring people away from the whole armor is best in slot meta and then give people more freedom to, again, experiment. So with that being said, that means in 1.6, armor is either going to come from your mods or from the kind of base armor value of your gear. So of course it goes without saying that having mods with armor on are still going to be useful, but by now I'm sure a lot of you guys have got those, so it might actually be worth stocking up on a few health mods as well, because if health does end up becoming that important, then you might want to stack a load of that instead. So stamina mod with health, grab it, might be worth your time either way. Then after that, taking a stop in DZ02. First up, your gear vendor, operator mask with Tenacious, a vest with Vigorous on, a Spec Ops backpack with Technical, knee pads with Prosperous, a gunslinger holster with Nimble, and Spec Ops gloves with Cunning. So not actually anything especially exciting there. Then jumping over to DZ03, weapons up here. First wave PF45, expert and trained, a black market T821, meticulous, dominant and talented, a G36C with competent, fierce and focused, Marine Super 90, accurate, brutal and determined, an M700 with sustained, predatory and elevated, and finally a classic M60 with self-preserved, predatory and vicious. Then up to DZ04, gear mods up next. You have a prototype electronics mod with plus 3000 skill power and a prototype performance mod with plus 7% mobile cover health. Next up, DZ05 with your weapon mods. You have an extended magazine with magazine size, crit hit damage and rate of fire, a muzzle brake with stability, crit hit chance and optimal range, hand stop with reload speed, crit hit damage and optimal range, and a T2 micro red dot sight with headshot damage, optimal range and stability. Also, something else to bear in mind, in 1.6, they are actually lessening the gap between headshot and body shot damage, which is a bit of an odd choice, to be honest, because headshots should typically be rewarded, but either way, that effectively means there will be a little bit less focus on going for headshot damage. You will still, of course, output greater damage if you're shooting an enemy in the head anyway, but with a slightly lesser gap, you might end up just going for body shots, stacking crit damage, and then just spraying at kind of central mass. Again, something we need to test in the PTS, but that is, of course, information from the current blog posts. And then finally, up in DZ06, Sentry's Cool Mask, Predator's Mark Vest with plus health on it. Again, probably going to be quite useful to consider because health is, of course, going to be a more important thing to roll on armor in 1.6, so that's actually potentially quite nice. D3 FNC Backpack with Skill Haste on, a Tactician's Authority knee pads with damage to elites, Defense Holster with more Skill Haste, and a pair of Firecrest gloves with crit hit damage, assault rifle damage, and damage to elites. Something else on Skill Haste, also as a very quick thing, if you guys are avid users of First Aid, the cooldown on First Aid in 1.6 is going to be extended a little bit, and also there'll be a bigger focus put on skill power. So if you want to use things like First Aid and actually have them be good, you're going to have to more heavily spec into skill power, and of course Skill Haste will go hand in hand with that, because if the cooldown is longer, then Skill Haste will of course lessen the cooldown. After that, turning our attention to the safe houses, starting off with Autumn's Hope. There are a couple of things here, nothing like ultra urgent, but things to consider. Operator backpack with resourceful on, so again, healing is applied to your skill objects, so if you are a shield build user, then you might want to grab that if you haven't got it already. And there is also a prototype electronics mod here with health, so as we spoke about before, not entirely sure whether this is going to be necessary just yet, but in anticipation for 1.6, you might want to consider at least holding on to a few mods with health. After that, jumping all the way to the top left of the Dark Zone checkpoints, West 46th Street, because all the other ones on the east side of the map are completely useless. You have a lightweight M4, not a perfect roll, not by a long shot, but it does have Deadly in the free slot. It also has Prepared, and it has Commanding. You could roll out Commanding for something else, and it would actually be a pretty decent weapon. Obviously, as mentioned, it's not a perfect roll, but I know that some of you guys are still after a lightweight M4, so this is an option. And that is pretty much it. All the other vendors are not really worth talking about, so bit of a light week this week, but as mentioned, a few things to think about going forward, potentially grabbing some things that do have crit hit damage, just in preparation for that Seeker set. Also considering looking out for gear pieces and gear mods that have health on, especially on the gear piece front. I'm not necessarily sure whether you're going to need mods, because you might still throw in armor mods to kind of give you that armor. But once we actually work out exactly how the kind of split works and exactly how the sort of weighting works, then we can decide exactly how important armor is going to be in the kind of overall toughness equation. Either way, that's it. Thank you for watching. If you guys have any questions, drop a comment down below. I'll also have a video coming out later on today to talk more about the kind of 1.6 information we have right now, so do stay tuned for that. And over the course of the weekend, I've got some more videos coming. But take it easy. Catch you next time. Peace out.